Yeah. Hi everyone, and thank you first of all for inviting FCA Innovate, the FCA Innovate department, to such an exciting summit. I have a personal affinity for Scotland. It's great to be back here. Many years ago, studying at the University of St Andrews on a personal level, it's great to be here. The FCA Innovate department will actually be conducting a series of virtual presentations, 7 in total, across the summit. So we'll be very present during it throughout. This presentation in itself will really sort of introduce who we are. You know, why do we exist and how do we operate? My name is Ravi, and I am from the FCA. I am head of Department for Innovate, which is a fantastic department full of passionate people who are really talented. So what is the purpose? What is our purpose and why do we exist? So there's 3 reasons broadly. The first is to learn about how innovation in the markets we regulate will give rise to opportunities and risks. Secondly, to stimulate and foster desirable innovation safely. And thirdly, to support the FCA in becoming a digital and data-led regulator, and also to influence our UK and global regulatory innovation agenda. The Innovate department has 5 teams. First of all, our regulatory Sandbox. Second of all, our direct support and advice unit. Third, our engagement team, which conducts bilateral and multilateral agreements domestically and internationally. Our AI thought leadership practice. And finally, our newly formed marketing, comms and change function. However, we're going to go back to the beginning on this. So Project Innovate launched in 2014, and the role and the remit of Innovate has actually expanded ever since. We recognise that innovation can have a positive driving effect in terms of effective competition in the interests of consumers. And we firmly believe that the actions and the words of the regulator can have a direct impact in terms of the level of innovation within the market. So this initiative actually began with understanding that there was a real need to help support firms with innovative business models to operate and develop within the regulatory context. And the service that we provided was called Direct Support, where we provide valuable, insightful and unique regulatory support to innovative firms with innovative business models. Direct Support has received nearly 1,500 applications since inception. Our Direct Support team, coupled with our engagement team, provided the foundation for us to be part of the innovation ecosystem and to really understand what innovative firms actually want from the regulator. And we recognised that there was a need to actually go further in the services that we offer. In particular, providing the ability for firms to test their innovative business models live with customers in the market on a controlled basis. And it was at this point that we introduced a new service to the market called the Regulatory Sandbox, and we launched our first cohort in 2016. We're now on our 7th cohort, and to date we have completed or have in flight 110 tests. So the Regulatory Sandbox seeks to provide firms with the ability to test products and services in a controlled environment, to reduce, has the potential benefit of reduced time to market at potentially lower costs, and providing support in identifying appropriate consumer protection safeguards to build into those new products and services, and helping firms gain better access to finance through a demonstration of the proposed innovation and that it can actually work in a real-world context. We move on to the Global Financial Innovation Network, known as GFIN. It's a really good example of how global collaboration can work in practice in the regulatory innovation agenda beyond the UK. So the FCA created GFIN in 2019, in January 2019, with 12 regulators at the time. And that's now increased to over 70 participants and is growing all the time. And this was really about how can we promote innovation in the interest of consumers globally. And in the last year, GFIN has been running what we call a cross-border testing initiative. It's also known as the Global Sandbox, allowing firms to test their innovative products and services across multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. So it's been a really huge undertaking for us in being the chair of GFIN to do this. We received over 38 applications from 23 participating regulators across 5 continents. And it was the very first time that cross-border testing had been successfully achieved within GFIN following a pilot that we ran in 2019. And it serves as a really good example of what can be achieved through global collaboration. In terms of our national engagement, and we'll come on to our international engagement, we need to make sure that our regulatory framework supports a thriving and healthy UK fintech ecosystem. And it doesn't happen in isolation for us. It really is about how we work together in partnership with other regulators and stakeholders. And that's why domestically, national connectivity is hugely important to us. And the FCA continues to have direct engagement with regional trade bodies, leading representatives from across the industry through bilateral and multilateral agreements and membership of key committees and working groups. Internationally to date, we have signed 13 cooperation agreements with overseas regulators, 8 of which incorporate a referral mechanism for innovative businesses to enter into other markets. The Khalifa Review is something that many of you have probably heard of, and sets out the strategy and delivery plan to ensure that the UK can capitalise upon its position of being a leading place for fintech businesses. The FCA welcomes the review and is committed to delivering a package of measures designed to support fintech firms to scale up as part of our plans known as Sandbox. So this includes a number of features. First of all, launching an always open regulatory sandbox that will be available on a rolling basis, clarifying the scope of qualifying propositions to allow as many firms as possible to have access to our services. Launching in conjunction with the City of London cooperation, our second digital sandbox pilot, inviting applications to test proof of concepts to solve sustainability and climate change financial challenges, and considering how to provide a one-stop shop for firms so that they can easily dock into our services and know how to navigate across the range of services that we provide. And just to move on in terms of the digital sandbox and give you a greater sense of what that's all about. So it's really there to support early stage innovation by providing access to a secure digital environment where products and solutions can be tested with synthetic data assets, allowing what's tested to be validated and showcased to regulators and industry observers. So we conducted a pilot earlier this year, which supported 28 firms from 94 applications. The regulatory and digital sandboxes are designed to complement each other and offer a different set of services, tools, and features. So together they aim to kind of broaden the level of support that we provide to the marketplace. So from early stage proof of concept development in the digital sandbox with synthetic data assets, to testing new products and services with consumers live with the regulatory sandbox. The digital sandbox is actually also key for the FCA's sustainability and innovation agenda, which seeks to assist firms and regulators to overcome some of the challenges and new approaches, new ways of thinking to address sustainability and climate change. Another example of this is our Green Fintech Challenge, which is a package of our firm-facing support services, which will come into more detail later on in this presentation. So our regulatory sandbox, direct support and advice unit, providing those services as a mechanism for firms to test it live in the market, new products and services that will aid the transition to a net zero economy. And we'll just now move on to some of the emerging technology trends and trends that we have seen directly through our firm-facing support services. So I'm going to touch on a few of these. I won't necessarily go through the whole slide here, but we'll pick up on a few. So first of all, the continued digitalization of financial services firms. So we are seeing continued growth of digital-first businesses with fintechs experiencing further investment, and the field of red tech is gaining growing importance, particularly as a result of COVID-19. Operational resilience, including cyber. So COVID-19 has put an immense pressure on the technology capabilities of firms, particularly in terms of their operational resilience. Cyber security will become even more significant for institutions in the future as firms need to tackle challenges, particularly in shifting to more cloud-based models and infrastructure. Big tech, crypto assets, and central banking digital currencies. So big techs are making huge inroads into the financial services market and particular offerings, while crypto assets have captured the interests of the UK public and also for the regulators as well in terms of the approaches to address this. So more attention is being given to central bank digital currencies, particularly in terms of what those approaches and frameworks might be. AI applications, we'll move on to that next. Firms are increasing their testing and usage of AI and machine learning applications. In addition to identifying new algorithms and data sources, focus is also being given to explainability, fairness, and potential biases in the algorithms used. And new AI and machine learning techniques are enabling firms to tap into more non-traditional data sources and techniques. And moving on to ESG, environmental, societal, and governance, we've observed a number of technology solutions that tackle a whole range of challenges in ESG. For example, solutions to help industry to fill ESG-related data gaps, SupTech solutions to support compliance with ESG-related regulatory developments, and consumer-facing technologies that connect consumers with businesses or financial products that align with their social and environmental values. This slide just gives a sense of the scale and the breadth that we cover with our firm-facing support services. So in the 6 years that we've been in operation as FCA Innovate, we've assisted over circa 600 firms through our direct support service. We have over 70 GFIN members, and as I mentioned before, that number is growing. 72 firms through our advice unit. We've signed 10 cooperation agreements. We've had 150 applications accepted into cohorts 1 to 7 of our regulatory sandbox, and we've produced over 2 billion synthetic data records for our digital sandbox pilot. We're going to move on now in terms of our firm-facing support services, and we're going to start off with direct support. So direct support, as I mentioned, was the very first service that we launched in 2014. And it helps innovative firms understand the FCA's regulatory regime and our expectations of firms who are seeking to provide financial services. And firms need to meet 4 aspects of our eligibility criteria to use this particular service. So the innovation needs to be groundbreaking or significantly different. So we're not looking for artificial forms of product differentiation. It really truly needs to be groundbreaking or significantly different. It should offer good prospects of consumer benefits directly or through increased competition. On background research, the firm should have made their best attempts to understand regulation. And last but not least, there's a real need there needs to be a real need for support, as the product may not necessarily fit nicely into our regulatory regime. What we provide to firms are predominantly driven by their needs, so the support we provide is actually quite broad. So we can help firms, including those from a tech background, who have an idea to understand how regulation works, whether the firm needs to be authorised, and answer detailed set and complex queries about a particular technology or new service that doesn't necessarily squarely fit into our existing regime. So we can clear up any perceived regulatory grey areas. If the innovative nature of what a business is doing means that it's not clear to them what regulated activity they're undertaking, or they have questions whether they are even doing a regulated activity at all, this is very much the type of question that our direct support team can help answer. We also provide high-level feedback and signposting to firms who are rejected through this service. So we do provide that help and support still. We provide questions to their business model and outline some of the potential risks of harm they might introduce to consumers. Hence, we add value by preventing harm and steering firms to the right direction at the very early stages of their business model. So the firms that we support in direct support are really diverse, from large incumbent banks to insurers, regtech firms to startups. The sectors that firms operate in are vast as well. So retail banking, retail investments, consumer lending, insurance and wholesale markets. And the types of technologies that we see come through direct support include areas such as DLT and blockchain, open banking, robo-advice, AI and machine learning, and data analytics, amongst many others. And we also recognise that fintechs who are creating genuine innovation and propositions are largely non-regulated, particularly for this type of service. And our data supports that. And that's actually quite understandable when you think about some of the innovations that we've seen in direct support and into the marketplace. So particularly things around digital ID and leveraging open banking capabilities. So a large proportion of the firms we see through this service tend to be non-authorised. So since direct support was set up at the end of, and by the end of Q1 2021, we have received nearly 1,500 requests for support, of which we've supported 560 firms. And this number is increasing every week as direct support is open all year round on a rolling basis. On average, the teams receive around 200 applications a year, and this number seems to be relatively unaffected by the impacts of Brexit and by COVID-19 as well. So in the first quarter of this year, we received over 45 applications. We're going to move on to our regulatory sandbox and outline what it is and what it's not. So the regulatory sandbox is a space to test new ideas with real consumers. Firms can use the data and insights gathered from their test to inform the further development of their model, particularly when they come to roll that out and scale that outside of the sandbox. The sandbox is open to authorised and non-authorised firms that are looking to test their innovations in the UK financial services markets. Firms in the sandbox have a dedicated case officer and get access to our regulatory expertise. And we also appreciate, similar to direct support, that those firms might not necessarily fit squarely into our regulatory regime, and we can help those firms navigate that path. We closely oversee the tests by working with firms to identify what the key risks are to consumers and agree on a specific set of bespoke safeguards for the firm as well. Sandbox actually provides us with many benefits as well, particularly market insights, which have informed our current thinking on crypto assets and open banking, for example, and many others. And what's really important to stress when it comes to our Sandbox as well is it's not a space which is exempt from regulation. In fact, we don't feel that would be helpful to firms either, particularly from exiting the Sandbox, post-Sandbox, that actually then having to operate in a world where there is the regulatory context. So it certainly is a place where regulation comes into play in our Sandbox. However, we do apply a degree of proportionality with that in terms of the rules and requirements specific to the firms who use our Sandbox. So for example, a firm which sells to, let's say, 200 customers over a limited period of 6 months through the Sandbox would have a different set of rules and different application of rules and proportionality to a firm with, let's say, a million customers who's doing it on a more longer term or permanent basis. So therefore, our approach to this is actually a risk-based, proportional-based model. So at the end of the testing period, if a firm meets our threshold conditions and other relevant requirements, the restrictions can be lifted and that firm will be fully authorised. The Sandbox is really integral for us in helping achieve our competition objective. By supporting more firms getting into the market, we can help drive better services at cheaper prices. But as well as us supporting firms, as I mentioned, we benefit as well from that service too. We're able to see how new technologies and new innovations work in the market, what works well for consumers, what doesn't, what potential risks there might be arising from those new technologies, and what controls can be put in place to help mitigate those risks. And these insights we can share with our colleagues across the FCA to inform our policy making. So the insights that we generate through our regulatory Sandbox, we've got a huge desire to actually do more with the insights that we generate, both internally, sharing them around the FCA, but also to the market as well. And just to articulate the value that we provide to the market. So the Bank of International Settlement, there's a Bank of International Settlements report, which was into the FCA regulatory Sandbox in November 2020, which outlined that Sandbox firms had a 50% higher probability of raising funding and raised a higher average amount of funding by around 15%. And results suggest that Sandboxes could become a crucial policy tool for harvesting the benefits of financial innovation. I'm just going to move on to our next service that we provide, the advice unit. So the Financial Advice Markets Review was launched by the FCA and the Treasury as well in August 2015. It looked at what needed to be done to ensure that financial services and the advice market delivered affordable and accessible financial advice and guidance to everyone, particularly those who do not have significant wealth or income. So the Financial Advice Markets Review, known as FARMA, noted the existence of an advice gap. For example, a situation where consumers are unable to get advice and guidance they need at a price that they are willing to pay. So the advice unit was set up in the response to the FARMA review in May 2016 and has expanded its scope in June 2017, so that it focuses on automated models looking to deliver low-cost investment advice or guidance in relation to investments, pensions, protection, general insurance, mortgages, and debt counselling. And it's open to applications from firms from all sizes, whether new startups or large firms, provided they meet our eligibility criteria. So that eligibility criteria includes that the model must target unserved or underserved consumers. There needs to be a genuine consumer benefit. Core elements of the customer journey need to be automated. And the firm should have developed a clear proposal for its service and considered how the regulation will apply to them. And the model must relate to one of the sectors that I mentioned, covered by the advice units. And the firm must also have specific questions about the application of FCA rules to the model. And just very briefly, we'll cover this in terms of, this illustrates the importance of our domestic engagement that the FCA department undertakes in order to capture the insights and best practice and share them around the fintech ecosystem. So the FCA supports a range of government departments, domestically and internationally, on key topics related to financial services innovation. So this includes the government's post-Brexit trade agenda, so free trade agreements, FTAs, and informal engagements. The Department of International Trade Fintech bridges, cross-sectoral innovation collaboration with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and the implementation of the Khalifa Review. So alongside HMG, the FCA Innovate also participates in multiple industry-led fintech bodies, and some of which you can see on the screen here. Just moving on to slide 10. So in addition to our domestic engagement, the FCA undertakes, we also participate with firms and the financial services community on an international level. So I mentioned before that we have 13 cooperation agreements, and the main purpose of that is to encourage that regulator-to-regulator dialogue and to support fintech firms' referrals from each other's sandboxes. They include Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, India, China, Japan, the US, and Canada as well. So they also form part of the UK government fintech bridges, so supporting Treasury and the Department of International Trade pillars relating to government dialogue on fintech policy and trade and investment with DIT. So we also regularly engage in bilateral calls with key regulators and jurisdictions that we can learn from or work with to further the FCA's objectives, including policy and innovation matters. We also mentioned our GFIN earlier, and in our capacity as chair of GFIN, we're looking to provide more efficient dialogue with regulators globally and helping firms navigate between countries as they look to scale and test their propositions. And just to kind of cover the future direction of FCA Innovate, and I'll draw this to a close shortly. So the FCA Innovate has announced that its sandbox is now always open. We launched that on the 2nd of August. So firms can now apply to that at any point in time throughout the year at the stage which is right for them. So since its creation, the regulatory sandbox has operated on a cohort basis. It really has been the blueprint for the UK, but also globally as well for other sandboxes. But we felt that now is the right time to switch it to an always open sandbox on a rolling basis, so that firms don't have to apply it during time-limited windows and can apply it at the point which is relevant for them. And we're also making some other changes in the near future in FCA Innovate. So the first is around providing a digital firm journey, a digital first experience in applying for all of our firm-facing services. So as part of that, we're taking quite a unique perspective into our regulatory support services with user-centered design approach, co-creating with firms so we can really optimize the experience using the data well, so we can share it both internally and externally. And also providing more effective digital content. Everything that we've done so far has been on that one-to-one basis, but actually how can we share those insights wider to the market, particularly around firms who have completed the full life cycle, to really bring that to life to the wider market, or providing lessons learned to firms who have perhaps been rejected from our services, but really to help increase the application quality going forward. And in the longer term, what we're looking to do is provide a digital-first single point of entry for all of our firm-facing services, so that they can be completely consistent and harmonised in what we do. At the moment, there are multiple different entry points to our services, and we're aware of that. But actually providing the basis for improved firm experience in terms of clearer discoverability, being able to clearly navigate and use our services is going to be a great benefit to you as firms and the wider market as well. And finally, we're also refining our domestic and international engagement strategies to have a more efficient, coordinated and purposeful approach, both UK and internationally as well, which will allow us to better use the insights and intelligence gained through the various forums that we have for the benefit of the UK ecosystem and globally as well. So thank you for your time. That draws to a close our presentation today.
Thank you very much, Ravi.